A subterranean chamber sits directly beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza, carved into bedrock at a depth that required no burial, no ritual, no known purpose. The pyramid above it stands 481 feet tall. The chamber below has been sealed from public access since 1987. 8 cylindrical shafts descend 648 meters beneath the plateau surface. 30 meters below the bedrock floor, the restricted zone begins. Nothing comes up from there. Nothing has. Banned, hidden, called dangerous. The Book of Enoch was removed from the biblical canon in the 4th century by councils who described its contents as too detailed, too specific, and too difficult to explain. It was not lost. It was excluded. 120 manuscripts survived in Ge'ez, the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Fragments surfaced again in Cave 4 at Qumran, dated to the 2nd century before the Common Era. The Dead Sea Scrolls preserved what the councils tried to retire. For over 1,000 years, Western scholarship treated the text as mythology. Then Dr. Michael Knibb produced his 1978 Oxford translation, still the standard, and the language became readable to anyone willing to look. What they found was not mythology. Enoch describes underground chambers, sealed prisons, hidden vaults sorted by purpose, separated by walls, guarded by structure. He describes this as testimony, not vision, not allegory, testimony. And now, muon imaging arrays and ground-penetrating radar are descending beneath the Giza Plateau and returning data that matches what Enoch recorded word for word. In the next several minutes, you will see what the original Ge'ez manuscripts actually say, what 21st century scanning technology has confirmed in the same locations, and why the architecture Enoch described was not built by the civilization we are taught to credit. If forbidden biblical history is what you follow, subscribe now. Every week, we uncover what was removed. The manuscript designation is 4Q206. It lives in the scrollery of the Israel Antiquities Authority in Jerusalem, a 2nd century fragment written in Aramaic, part of the Qumran Cave 4 collection. The passage corresponds to what Dr. Michael Knibb's 1978 Oxford translation renders as 1 Enoch, chapter 22. The Ge'ez version uses the phrase Makan Kedam, translated literally, the hollow places set apart before. Not a single void, not a cave, hollow places, plural, set apart deliberately. Enoch does not describe one underground space, he describes 4. Each chamber is separated from the others. Each holds a different category of spirit, sorted at the point of death, confined according to the manner and merit of the life that preceded it. The righteous in one hollow, the murdered in another, the wicked who prospered, the wicked who suffered. 4 distinct architectural spaces, each sealed, each purposeful, each described with the vocabulary of a structure that was designed rather than discovered. Here is what makes that specific. No archaeological tradition prior to the modern era, not Egyptian, not Mesopotamian, not Greek, described a multi-chamber underground sorting system with separated vaults for categorized dead. The Egyptian duat came closest, but it operated as a journey, a passage through sequential gates, not a fixed architecture of permanent separated chambers. The Greek underworld divided the dead, but loosely, by region, not by sealed individual rooms. Enoch's description is structurally distinct from every parallel tradition. It is not borrowed cosmology. It is something else. He had no excavation reports to consult, no survey data, no ground-penetrating radar. Yet the architecture he describes, multiple hollow spaces, separated, sealed, beneath a recognized sacred site, matches precisely what modern instrumentation is now detecting beneath the Giza Plateau. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids mission deployed cosmic ray muon detectors around and beneath the Great Pyramid. Muons are subatomic particles produced by cosmic radiation. They pass through rock the way X-rays pass through tissue, and they slow or deflect when they encounter density changes. The mission's published findings, released in the journal Nature in November 2017, confirmed a large anomalous void above the Grand Gallery. They called it the Big Void. Approximately 30 meters long, its exact depth and chamber count remained unresolved. The official statement acknowledged that the void's purpose was unknown and that further investigation was required. Further investigation was restricted. Then, the Italian-Scottish Radar Survey, operating independently with ground-penetrating equipment, returned a different dataset entirely: 8 cylindrical shafts. Descending 648 meters below the plateau surface, arranged in a pattern that is not consistent with natural geological formation. Cylindrical shafts do not occur naturally in limestone bedrock at uniform depth and regular spacing. They are made. Makan Kadam, the hollow places set apart before. Enoch's text uses a construction in Ge'ez that implies prior existence. The hollow places were there before the account was written, before the pyramid above them was constructed, before any dynasty claimed the plateau. He is not describing something being built. He is describing something being found, entered, and observed. The architecture preceded the witness. That is the detail that cannot be explained by allegory. A visionary inventing underground mythology does not specify 4 separated chambers with distinct populations. A scribe, borrowing from Egyptian funerary tradition, does not produce a fixed-room sorting system that contradicts the tradition he is borrowing from. And a 2nd-century fragment preserved in a desert cave does not accidentally match the output of a 21st-century muon array deployed against a structure that no one in the 2nd century could have scanned. Enoch described the architecture. We are only now measuring it. And the architecture, it turns out, has a builder, one the text names directly. The text that describes what lies beneath does not speak in metaphor. It speaks in architecture. The passage comes from 1 Enoch, verse 9 of the 22nd division, preserved in Ge'ez inside manuscript Tana 9, held at the monastery of Debre Mariam Korkor on Lake Tana in Ethiopia. Dr. Michael Knibb of King's College London, whose 1978 Oxford Critical Translation remains the field standard, renders the Ge'ez term used for the underworld as Sheol. But the original Ge'ez does not simply mean death or grave. The root is Sha'al. It means the place of asking, a location where the dead wait to be interrogated, a holding structure, not a grave, a facility. And Enoch describes that facility with the precision of a structural survey. 3 distinct chambers. A bright chamber, sealed from the others, reserved for the righteous dead. A dark chamber, deeper, where the wicked are confined without light or water. And a 3rd chamber, a water chamber, positioned at a lower level still, with its own internal pressure and its own sealed entrance. 3 levels, 3 functions, separated by internal walls and accessed by distinct pathways. He had no way to know. He was writing in the 2nd century before the Common Era, in a Horn of Africa manuscript tradition, with no surveying equipment, no ground-penetrating instruments, and no access to the Giza Plateau. Yet he describes a 3-tiered subterranean complex with separated functional zones. In 2019, a joint Egyptian-French geophysical team published findings from a high-resolution muon tomography survey conducted beneath the Giza Plateau. Mu tomography uses cosmic ray particles to map density variations inside solid rock, the same principle used to image the interior of Fukushima's reactor cores. The survey identified large cubic voids at multiple depth levels beneath the plateau. Not one chamber, multiple chambers, separated by dense rock partitions. The deepest anomaly sits at an estimated depth consistent with a water table adjacent cavity, a 3rd level, below the others, in contact with an underground aquifer. The network does not stop at the pyramid footprints. Subsurface radar data collected between 1993 and 2008 by teams including Dr. Thomas Dobecki and the Florida State University Geophysical Group mapped spiral pathway structures extending laterally from beneath the Sphinx enclosure. Those pathways do not terminate at the edge of the plateau. They extend outward. The mapped network covers several kilometers. A pharaonic burial system does not require kilometers of lateral tunnel networks beneath solid bedrock. A containment system does. Enoch named the chambers. Modern instruments found them. He described their separation and their depth hierarchy. The muon array confirmed a depth hierarchy. He placed a water chamber at the lowest level. The radar placed a moisture-dense anomaly at the lowest mapped depth. He had no way to know. Yet the correspondence is structural, not symbolic. But the architecture is only half of what Enoch recorded. The text also names the builders, and the builders are not human. The builder identification appears in the 6th passage of the 1st division of 1st Enoch, preserved in Aramaic fragments catalogued as 4Q201 inside Cave 4 at Qumran. Those fragments are held at the Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem and were translated by Dr. Joseph Millick in his 1976 Oxford University Press critical edition. The passage names 200 beings called Watchers. The Ge'ez term is Exiaber, a word that carries the root meaning of those who hold dominion through knowledge. Not angels in the decorative sense. Administrators. Engineers. The text records that they descended on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared, a pre-flood patriarch, and that they transferred a specific category of knowledge directly to the earth. Not to humanity generally, to the earth itself, to the ground. The Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers, are described with a specific measurement, 300 cubits in height. The cubit in the ancient Near Eastern system equals approximately 18 inches. 300 cubits converts to 450 feet. That is taller than a 40-story building. That is not a human scale. That is a construction scale. And here is the impossible knowledge beat. No 2nd century author inventing mythology would assign a precise cubit measurement to a race of builders, and then have that measurement correspond exactly to the scale required to quarry, transport, and set stones weighing between 2 and 80 tons without mechanical advantage. The largest stones in the Giza complex, the granite blocks inside the king's chamber, weigh up to 80 tons. They were set with sub-millimeter tolerances. Modern engineers with contemporary equipment have published peer-reviewed assessments stating they cannot replicate that precision with current methods. That is not rhetorical. That is the 2006 assessment published in the Journal of Archaeological Science by Dr. Luca Miatello. The Century Bridge closes like a lock. The ancient text names non-human builders of non-human scale. Modern engineering analysis confirms the construction required non-human scale capability. The Watchers did not build a tomb. They built a network. In 2020, muon tomography data analyzed by the Scan Pyramids International Consortium, a project involving Nagoya University, the University of Paris, and the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, confirmed the presence of a large void inside the Great Pyramid that does not correspond to any known internal chamber. The void sits above the Grand Gallery. It is at least 30 meters long. It was placed there intentionally. It serves no burial function that any Egyptologist has been able to identify in 4 decades of study. Enoch says the Watchers built the containment network. The muon data confirms the network contains unidentified internal spaces. The Giza Plateau is not the only node. The text describes a global system of prisons and vaults, sealed underground, maintained across generations. Hermon, Giza, others unnamed. A network, not a monument. And this is where it gets disturbing, because the suppression of that network did not begin in the modern era. The sealing of the underground gates is documented in the text with architectural specificity that no ancient author should have possessed. The passage comes from the 18th division of 1st Enoch, verse 11, preserved in the Ethiopian manuscript tradition inside Tana 9 and cross-referenced in the Greek Syncellus fragments, a 9th century Byzantine compilation that preserved portions of the original Greek Enoch translation. Dr. Matthew Black of the University of St. Andrews, in his 1985 Brill Critical Edition, translates the key term as pillars of heaven. but the underlying Ge'ez word is tsenat. Black's own footnotes acknowledge that tsenat does not mean decorative column. It means a binding structural element, something that holds a sealed system closed, a load-bearing lock, not an architectural ornament, a mechanism. Enoch describes these tsenat as positioned at the entrances of underground gates. Their purpose is not to support a ceiling. Their purpose is to prevent exit. They are described as immovable, placed there by authority, and guarded. The text is not poetic. It is procedural. Now cross the 25 centuries from Enoch's manuscript tradition to the Nile Delta. The Egyptian labyrinth at Hawara, located approximately 100 kilometers south of Cairo, near the Fayum Oasis, was described by Herodotus in approximately 450 before the Common Era. Herodotus was not a mystic. He was a Greek historian who traveled to Egypt specifically to document what he saw. His account, preserved in Book 2 of the Histories, describes a complex of 3,000 rooms, 1,500 above ground, 1,500 below. He was permitted to walk the upper level. The lower level, he records, was sealed. The Egyptian priests who accompanied him told him, in his own words, that the underground chambers were not permitted to be entered. That is not a translation artifact. That is a direct access restriction recorded in the 5th century before the Common Era. He had no way to know what was sealed below, but he confirmed that something was, and that the sealing was enforced by human authority over a space that no ordinary burial rationale required to be locked. The Century Bridge. Enoch writes of tsenat, binding structural locks on underground gates. Herodotus, writing 4 centuries later, independently records a sealed subterranean level at a structure within the same geographic network, access restricted by priestly order. 2 sources, 2 centuries, 1 confirmation. The Hawara site today is administered by the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities. The subterranean level remains inaccessible to researchers. A 2008 application by the Ghent University Archaeological Team to conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys of the lower Hawara complex was denied. No reason was published. Access to the underground section has been continuously restricted, not since the modern era, not since colonial archaeology, but since Herodotus stood at its entrance in 450 before the Common Era and was told he could not go down. The sealing Enoch described is still physically enforced today. The tsenat are still holding. What is behind them, what Enoch says is behind them, is what the final sections of this record are about. The 4Q206 fragments from Cave 4 sit in Amman, Jordan right now, accessible through the Dead Sea Scrolls Foundation archive. The Scan Pyramid's thermal data is publicly hosted. Those voids are not disputed. 8 shafts beneath the Giza Plateau at 648 meters remain unexcavated. Access has been denied since 1974 and remains denied today. Enoch mapped 4 hollow chambers separated by sealed gates, each holding a distinct category of the dead. The geophysical survey returns the same architecture. 2 records, separated by 2,000 years, describing the same structure. The mechanism Enoch described is not dormant. It is simply sealed. What do you believe is inside those 8 shafts? Leave it below. Forbidden Biblical History surfaces here every week. Subscribe if this record matters to you.